One of the things that my mother imparted to me was a very simple saying. And she said that a man must stand for something or else he will fall for anything. So when people are coming up and saying thank you for me providing this venue, you don't have to thank me for doing what is right. Because when I think about two great pieces of history that have happened in the United States of America, in this year, we will remember the 10th anniversary of 9/11, but we will also have that 70th anniversary of Pearl Harbor. And we must never let events like Pearl Harbor or 9/11 go away. We must never forget the things that happened on those 2 days in the attack upon the United States of America. And my fear is that maybe we could end up forgetting what happened on 9/11 because of certain things, as political correctness or this desire to be a multicultural America. But in being a multicultural America, we must never forget the fundamental principles and values that make us great. We must never forget those who have sacrificed and lost their lives to keep this country strong. So I stand here today with these survivors, with these family members, to make sure of one simple thing, that their story, that their loved ones will never be forgotten. Because just the same as when you go to that memorial of the USS Arizona, and you know that there are sailors that were never gotten out of the USS Arizona, there are still Americans that are at that site of Ground Zero whose bodies and remains were never recovered. That's why it is a sacred site. It is a sacred site that we must forever honor and must forever revere.
When Islam has a history of building victory monuments on places where it has triumphs, and where if we had an attorney general and a commander-in-chief who realized the psychological aspects of the struggle we are in, would they not contest the right of these people to build what is nothing less than a victory monument to our enemies?
Well, thank you, sir, for that question. And, you know, being a student of history, I will tell you that when you look at throughout history of Islamic conquest, I mean, you do see the same type of parallels. You know, I just spent a week during this work period in Israel. And when you go there and you see that upon the Temple Mount, now you have the Dome of the Rock and also Al-Aqsa Mosque. When you understand what happened with the fall of Constantinople and it becoming Istanbul, the exact same thing with the large mosque that was created there. And then when you look at Cordoba, which still many Islamists refer to as Al-Andalusia, you understand what the history behind Cordoba is, as well as you have the world's largest mosque that is right now being built right across from the Olympic Stadium in London. So I think that Ms. Hoagland said it absolutely right. It is about a moral right. It's about a moral responsibility. Let's look at it in this parallel. If 10 years or 9 years after Pearl Harbor, if the country of Japan had come to the United States of America and said we wanted to erect a memorial to Japanese naval seamanship at Pearl Harbor, what would we have said? And so I think that along that same parallel, that's what we're looking at here. We have to respect our America, and we have to respect the losses that these people have undergone. And this is not, for me, it's not a political issue. It's just what is right. And I would hope that every single person up here in the House and the Senate and in the administration will stand with these survivors, stand with the people of New York City, and stand with all Americans and understand that we don't think that this is the right thing to happen. Look, I was born and raised in Georgia. And, New York City was, light years away. But for me, my wife is from Brooklyn. And my wife once worked for Bankers Trust. Bankers Trust was right in that same area. And once upon a time, she had dealings in the World Trade Towers. And I remember when this happened, how it really gutted her. And it guts me as well. And this is not something that we should say, we have to move beyond it and we have to forget it. We should never forget this. Just the same as I said. We never forget Pearl Harbor. Decades from now, centuries from now, we must remember what happened on September 11th, 2001. It's part of our history.
My name is Tim Brown. I'm a retired New York City firefighter. I am a survivor of the collapse of both towers. I lost 93 of my friends, firefighter friends, on that day. I've been involved in this issue for quite a while now, as many of you know. I first want to say to the families, I am sorry to all of you that you have to go through this. Because haven't we been through enough? Why do people keep insisting on using 9/11 or leveraging 9/11? It's hard enough for us. So stop it. Leave us alone and let us try and live our lives, including Sharif el-Gamal. Stop it. Congressman West, thank you for your clear vision on this issue. We are grateful for your support. We need more members of Congress to see this film and to understand this issue clearly, like Congressman West does. We need their support. We will continue to fight with every ounce of our energy to stop this from happening. We will continue to ask the questions. And it's very simple. Sharif el-Gamal and the other secret investors in this project, leave us alone, go play your game somewhere else, and let us have our peace. 1,100 people never received an ounce of DNA from their loved one from that day. That is truly our graveyard. And yes, Park Place is a part of Ground Zero, despite people that say it's nowhere near Ground Zero. It is. The wheels, the landing gear of that plane went through, one of the planes went through the roof of that building. That building was never searched for body parts, DNA. We want that to happen, and we want them to go away and leave us alone. To the media, there are copies of Sacrifice Survivor here for you. Please take them and watch it. And Marty and your crew from Christian Action Network, Jason, have been steadfast at our side with this. So thank you very much, and thank you everyone for coming out. Thank you, Congressman.
Hi, my name is Martin Moyer. I am president and founder of Christian Action Network, the producer of the film Sacrifice Survivors. You listen to these stories, you can understand why we went to New York City and interviewed these family members to get their opinion on film about the building of this mosque at Ground Zero. This was perhaps one of the most difficult films we've ever made, pointing a camera at these many faces, hearing their tragic story, only to hear the additional heartbreak that each and every one of them have to go through now as they try to explain the outrage and the hurt of building a Sharia-compliant mosque on the graves of their loved ones. This film is not a story about anything other than what they feel is happening in New York City at Ground Zero and the respect that is not being given to their family members who they lost that day. It is an honor to be here, and I thank Congressman Allen West for hosting this event. Thank you very much. And for the 9/11 family members who came from everywhere to be here with us this day. And I want to thank you all personally. Thank you very, very much.
When are we going to realize that we are actually fighting a war with Islam, not just with radical Islamists?
Well, what I would say is this, you know, when I go back and read The Art of War by Sun Tzu, he says to know your enemy, to know yourself, and to know the environment and terrain and countless amounts of battles, you will always be victorious. I think we have to understand that the major religions of this world, Judaism and Christianity, did go through reformations. But when now you look at this next major religion, I call it a theocratic political construct, ideology. They need to go through a reformative process as well, because when you study history from 622 AD and beyond, ever since Muhammad left Mecca and took his hijrah and went out into Medina, there was a violent turn to this faith that is called Islam, and we must confront that and we must understand that. You know, we stand here right now. How many of us can take a flight over to Saudi Arabia and go visit Mecca and Medina? Okay, it's those type of things that we just have to ask that question, and we have to continue to challenge them because once again, if we continue to give and give and seed and give ground, we're not going to be respected, we're not going to be regarded. We've got to start asking the tough questions, especially if we want to move forward with the democratic principles of liberty and freedom that are established here in this country. You know, Muammar Gaddafi said something that was very interesting, I believe about 2 or 3 years ago, and he said this toward Europe. He said that Islam will eventually overtake Europe without firing a shot. And it's through that simple thing of migration and through the fact that, remember what I said, my mother talked about standing for something. If we don't want to stand for the principles and values that we hold near and dear here, eventually we will lose that. And it does not have to happen in the next 10 or 20 years, but it can happen in the next 50 or 100 years. Because remember, this is something that has been going on since the 7th century. So I am not sitting up here and condemning people who call themselves Muslims, because I have been in Muslim countries, I have fought beside Muslims, I have helped some of my previous interpreters over in Afghanistan get green cards to come here and be a part of this great thing that we have in the United States of America. But I think now is the time that we have to challenge this ideology. And if we are to peacefully coexist, I think that they have to come into the 21st century and push aside a lot of these 7th century ideas that they still hold on to.
Have we learned the lessons of 9/11? Are we any safer today than we were on 9/10?
I can address that to an extent. I'm a retired flight attendant for United Airlines, and I can speak to you and say unequivocally that we are not as safe as we should be when we fly. We do not have a uniform and cogent no-fly list. We do not have explosion impervious cargo holds. We do not have adequate protection for crew members against armed onslaught on board the aircraft again. We do not have adequate security for airplanes while they are sitting on the ground. People whose credentials and motives we are not sure of have unfettered access to cockpits and cabins and cargo holds. So we have a long way to go. And my son fought alongside a handful of other guys on board Flight 93, and he knew what it was like to be the last line of defense against terrorism. And I'm afraid it was very much that way for Jasper Sharinga when he took down the underwear bomber Abdul Muttalib, who was bound for Detroit, trying to blow an airplane out of the sky, and was stopped only by the efforts of a couple of very motivated passengers. It shouldn't be that way. We should continue to motivate our government to make sure that we are safe as we travel, as we work, as we live in our homes.
And if I could dovetail off of what Ms. Hogan just said, think about this. What do you say to the survivors of the Fort Hood attack? What do you say to the survivors of the attack at the Little Rock Army recruiting station? You know, we have been very fortunate in that we have been lucky with what happened on the flight from Detroit to Detroit. We were very lucky in what happened with the bombing attempt in New York's Times Square. But when you think about the fact that not too far away from here was the gentleman now that we have as one of our most wanted Islamic terrorists and a leader of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, Mr. al-Alawi. So when I say, have we really learned the lessons from 9/11, I don't think we have, because I think that we are so anxious with this fast food type of mentality that we can quickly move beyond something, that we're not willing to sit back and really assess, you know, what is happening in and around us. When we have places like Islamburg up in the upper state New York that is existing, as well as some other of these very questionable training areas here in the state of Virginia and all across this country, I think that we have to come to a realization that there is something that is the anathema of what we believe in, that is using our constitutional rights and freedoms, that is using the First Amendment to try to get within this country and establish a foothold and try to take this country down. When we do not secure our southern border with knowing that Hezbollah has training camps in South America that is, they're being funneled up through with the help of a lot of Mexican drug cartels to come across our border. We're finding prayer rugs. We're finding translations of Spanish to English, out of Arabic along these border routes. So I don't think we truly have learned the lesson of 9/11. We have been very blessed that we have not had a catastrophic event, But I will tell you that the last duty station that I had was at Fort Hood, Texas. And when that occurred, my wife and my daughter sat there wondering how that could have happened at a place where our soldiers are supposed to feel secure.
The Muslim Brotherhood, is there any support for getting that listed as a designated terrorist organization, first? And second, is there any prosecution being, for the Holy Land Foundation trial, the people who were listed in there, is there any headway to be made on the prosecution of those individuals?
Well, you will probably have to talk to the Homeland Security or the Judiciary Committee up here on the House and some of the members that sit there. But I think that we have to be very honest about who the Muslim Brotherhood is, what their charter is. I'm very concerned about what I see happening in Egypt right now. A lot of the euphoria that we thought with Hosni Mubarak being deposed, just coming from Israel, they're very concerned about what's happening in Egypt, as well as what could be happening in Libya also. So I think we need to confront some of these organizations, and there are a lot of satellite organizations that come from the Muslim Brotherhood that are operating here in the United States of America, as well as on our college campuses, where we must be concerned about some of the propaganda that is being fomented on our college campuses as well. I think that we have to ask those hard questions. We need to have those hearings. Congressman Peter King, my colleague, has gotten it started. I think that anyone that stands in opposition to him, that's not the right approach we should have. We should be able to ask the questions in this country.
Well, Russia has listed the Muslim Brotherhood as a designated terrorist organization in there. I mean, why can't Russia can do it? Why can't America do it? I mean, come on.
Well, I mean, absolutely right. I mean, the FBI has, you know, for instance, CARE. The FBI has already pretty much so blacklisted CARE and taken them off of any type of communications. So I think that we have to get toward that, and I'll take that up with Peter King. I'll give him that suggestion you just had.
Homegrown terrorism by the numbers. I mean, I see a map in here, but I don't see.
Well, I mean,
statistics.
we talk about homegrown terrorism. I mean, we just had down in South Florida a couple of local imams that were funneling money over to the Pakistani Taliban. And when we talk about what happened in 9/11, you know, we are not going to forget down in South Florida that Muhammad Atta lived in South Florida. As a matter of fact, he was picked up on a routine traffic stop in the city that I live in now, Plantation. He bought his tickets in Lauderdale by the Sea. So I think that, you know, if we want to get bogged down in a numbers game, that's not necessary, because the proof is in the pudding that there are things that are happening in this country that should cause us some type of concern. No one is saying that you cannot build a mosque in New York City. That's not the question here. The question is, will you honor and hold in reverence what we have just heard here today, that this is a sacred site for some people. This is a site that really is a burial ground. And do we really want to allow this to happen? And it's not about your constitutional right. It's about what is morally right to be done. And I think that that's where we have to make that stand.
During the August recess, have any of your constituents in Florida 22 expressed any specific concern about this? Have you talked to Jerry Nadler, obviously being in his district, about this? Has he expressed anything to you if you did talk to him?
Well, I will tell you, Andrea Plescia, who lives in my district, as well as you have many people that are retired from New York City that have a long-standing connection to New York City, they're very concerned about this. When you talk to the Jewish community in South Florida, they're very concerned. You know, I spoke at a Jewish community center after I got back from Israel. And why is it in the United States of America that a Jewish community center has to be behind gates and armed guards in this country? So that's one of the things I believe something is not right. If people here in this country have to live in that sense of fear for themselves and for their children to be able to, you know, just go and get a regular education. So I think that it is not just about being in New York, and that's one of the things that I talked about. What happened on 9/11 affected each and every one of us. I don't care if you live in Alaska. I don't care if you live in Guam. That was an attack on America, and we must all recognize that. Oh, well, lady right here in the back, I'm sorry.
Thank you, sir. Having listened to all this, do you have any comment in terms of a very practical immigration policy as to numbers and how we handle this as to who may come in and come out of the United States?
Well, I think you have to, as I talked earlier, you know, illegal immigration and securing your borders is not a race issue. It's a national security issue. It's an economic issue. It's an education issue, healthcare issue, and it's a local criminality issue. And I think we have to tackle that. We have to secure our borders. We have to enforce our laws. I've never been one to say you need to get a bus out there and try to round people up. But I think you need to take away the carrot by which you are tempting people to illegally come across your border and come into the United States of America. And I think you have attrition by enforcement. I think that another thing that we have to look at, a lot of people talk about profiling. I've never believed in the word profiling. As a former combat commander in Iraq, we called it trend analysis. And I think that's where you need to focus your resources and your efforts. You know, my chief of staff just recently told me about how I think he's 2 years of age. His little 2-year-old son had to take off his little, baby sandals so that he could go through security. I mean, we're getting to the point where this is absolutely ridiculous. And, I think I heard the Secretary of Homeland Security say we're going to get away from the shoe issue. But, when you go and travel like with El Al, they have a means by which they can, look for certain trends. And it's not invasive into the privacy of the citizen, but that's a very secure airline. And I think that we need to get back to focusing on what are the right type of means that we can keep Americans safe and secure. We can make sure that Americans are here within our country. I don't want to get away from us welcoming people from all different lands, because that's really what we are as a land of opportunity. But we also have to safeguard the American way of life. And I think that's the thing that we have to be able to focus on as we go forward. Yes, sir?
Do you have any comments on the Islamic Republic of Iran and their potential ties to terrorist organizations?
I mean, come on. I mean.
And the democratic movement within Iran and the potential delisting of the MBK?
Well, I tell you this, back in the late 70s, when you talk about deposing, leadership in the Middle East, getting rid of the Shah of Iran, look what we got. And now we've got, the #1 sponsor of terrorism. Matter of fact, I just read recently where the state TV or whatever in Iran has me listed as one of their great foes and enemies. So, that's a pretty good list to be on. So. We missed an opportunity, I think, with supporting that green movement in Iran. Why we did not do it, I have no idea, as opposed to, supporting this group out of Libya, which does have possibly some al-Qaeda sympathizers and people who have fought against our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines in Iraq and other places. So I think that there's going to come a time where we're going to have to knuckle down and get tougher with Iran. I'm very concerned about this recent announcement from the administration that we're only going to have 3,000 troops remaining in Iraq when we see Muqtada al-Sadr and the Mahdi army once again re-energized, better equipped, better trained, and getting that coming over from Iran. So we're going to have to contend with Iran. Iran is the hotbed for this Islamic totalitarianism that is evidence in militant Islam, and we have to confront that sooner or later. Sanctions means nothing in that part of the world because they don't care about their own people. And as a matter of fact, they will take those sanctions and the suffering that their people may be undergoing, they will just use that to foment even more hatred and unrest against the West. So eventually, you have to come to the realization that you cannot compromise, you cannot appease, you cannot negotiate with a madman. We tried that back in the late 1930s. Sir Neville Chamberlain didn't work out too well. We have to come to that realization now. MEK, I got to do some more research on that. Right here.
I'm Dave Jenkins with CNN, and I've been asked if you plan to stay a member of the Congressional Black Caucus.
Well, that really has nothing to do with this here.
Yeah, we can ask that outside. Yeah. We're going to keep the focus on the families, and we can do that outside.
Okay.
Tell people, like our teachers used to tell them, stay on task.
Following up on your earlier comment, you referenced the fact that Anwar al-Awlaki led prayers inside the United States Capitol after 9/11. And last April, Anwar Hajjaj, the former president of a designated terrorist organization, the Taiba Aid Association, also led prayers inside the United States Capitol. What can be done by the members of the House and the Senate to prevent individuals like Anwar Hajjaj and Anwar Awlaki from using our public spaces to promote their agenda?
I think there comes a time when the elected officials in the United States of America have to have some sense of courage. They have to get away from political correctness. And they have to stand up and understand that the American people voted us to be up here to protect the American people. And if we continue down this road, as I call it, multiculturalism on steroids, then we're going to present a gap by which we can get exploited time and time again. So I think that we have to start kind of like in baseball. The umpire calls a ball, and calls a strike, and it's time that we start calling some strikes out there.